Let's get started on the framework for teaching personal finance. Now, many of the lessons we're going to be covering here in this section of the course are recaps of other lessons. So you're going to be hearing them again in different ways. Remember the term spaced repetition and also being able to present things in different manners. That will help you deepen your level of knowledge on this important subject matter. In addition, it will be a great recap to prepare you for the final exam. Before I get into the training, a little history on these standards. When we came into existence in 2006, there was no standards for financial educators. There were standards for learners, but not for financial educators. As we began to grow in this industry and realize all the data points to the educator as the most important element in student achievement, a number of studies, all research really points to that. It's not curriculum, it's not other factors. It's the educator that's the primary factor in student achievement. We found it pretty weird that there was no standards for the educators, the person most responsible for student achievement. So we took it on ourselves to create these standards. Now, we didn't just create them ourselves. We looked for partners that had expertise in educator standards. And who we found was Charlotte Danielson. For those in the education space, you know her. For those outside of that, you likely don't. Charlotte Danielson wrote the framework for teaching, the most comprehensive set of standards for traditional educators. I think it was K through 12th grade. It might be 1st through 12th grade. And utilized by over half the state. So it's for any educator out there, you've probably utilized the framework for teaching or at least studied that in school. And when we approached her, we said, hey, your standards are great. We reviewed them. It just did not match because money had a lot of habits, emotions, behaviors. There's many other things we were measuring, just not content knowledge. And we said, hey, we love your standards, great framework, but it doesn't match our need to have standards in the personal finance industry. And she agreed. Surprisingly, I was actually shocked, and set us up with some of her consultants. And we worked with them over a period of, I think it was 6-8 months in developing these standards for financial education instructors. The framework for teaching personal finance was born, and still to this day, the only standards in the industry. So by far most comprehensive, will continue to be well into the future because we leverage Charlotte Danielson's team of experience in developing these and using her original framework for teaching as the basis for everything we're talking about here. So I wanted to give you a little history because it is important in the quality of the standards. And I'm going to be covering those standards on a real overview here with you on this video. We have breakout videos on each of the 4 domains coming up, but this section is important again for a couple reasons. Number one, it's going to be great for your test preparation, right? Second, it's a good framework for you just to refer back to time and time again, make sure you're on pace. Additionally, when you are out there promoting yourself or sharing your CFEI credentials, you can always point to these standards because we built the entire CFEI course around these standards, and the CFEI course actually exceeds what we have here. So you'll be very confident and capable to do so. Let's dive into these standards. I'm going to break them down one by one, trying to give you some tips and strategies. Again, the other videos will get down into more detail here for you, but the first domain, planning and preparation, right? Think back to what you learned in the training already, how important the planning and preparation is. Remember that concept we talked about earlier, the iceberg, right? You look at those iceberg pictures, that little part of the iceberg showing above the water, but the big part is below. This is planning and preparation. The educator's job, most of your time is going to be spent in preparing for the actual time you're presenting, right? So this is important for you to understand, just so you, if you're working with organizations, so you can set proper time expectations and understand what time it will take for you to actually execute a high quality program. This is an important section. And so go 1A. First thing you need to have is knowledge on the content and education methodologies on how to teach. That makes sense, right? We cover that in detail in the education methodologies, education philosophies, and the content knowledge portion of the training. Basically, you need to know what you're teaching and how to teach that effectively. That one's pretty common sense. Next, 1B, designing or selecting clear instructional outcomes based on measurable change, right? It could be behavior, sentiment, and other measures we look at. If we look back in the define section of the training, you're going to see the details we do across 8, 9, 10 different measures, depending on the type of class you have. That will showcase the actual change you're able to do. And again, as an educator, our primary responsibility is for the student, and we're responsible for leading them to the most effective way to achieve positive outcomes, right? We can't control those outcomes because they cannot follow your lead, etc. But still, our responsibility is doing our best, trying different methods, trying different strategies, trying different ways to encourage them to reach those end goals. 1C, designing coherent instruction and selecting age-appropriate instructional goals and delivery methods, right? A big problem in the industry is like a one-size-fits-all financial literacy presentation. We see it all the time. I have a financial literacy 101 course, and they do the same presentation to every audience without considering who they're serving. Think back to the design section of the training and the discovery section of the training, where you understand the audience's needs and then design the lessons around their age, literacy levels, cognitive abilities, life stage, what's coming up for them, what's important. Think back to that. 1D, demonstrating knowledge of learners' background, cultures, and financial situations, and integrating this into the instruction, right? That's all about discovery. Remember that section of the training, how important it was to understand who you're teaching before we're selecting the topics and lessons to deliver. Oftentimes this is backwards. People think, oh, I want to teach people about credit, right? So I'll build out this course, and maybe the people that they're going to be teaching, they have great credit. They don't need it. So it's important you understanding the needs and then selecting appropriate lessons from there. 1E, selecting or designing appropriate assessments aligned with defined education outcomes. Again, that goes back to the defined section of the training. Lastly, demonstrating knowledge of available resources for learners and stakeholders. We covered this slightly a few times, but I want to dig in there because it is important that we're encouraging lifelong learning, right? And helping them and guiding them to other additional resources. Maybe helping them find podcasts they're interested in, books, influencers that you kind of see that are providing good information. If it's very specific, knowledge, hey, are there courses or other classes they could take? Are you offering anything? So where is that? Maybe there's some accountability or other things you can offer, but having knowledge of where to direct them is key. After every class ends, right? We want to be able to have some action steps for them to take, whether it's homework or activities you assign, or having them find something they can continue their education in that space. It's always helpful there. Next section, domain 2, classroom environment. Right? This is how you manage that classroom. How are you in front of those students? How is that environment? Is it an environment of trust and respect? Or is it an out-of-hand environment where students are making fun of other students and it's just wild in there? Our responsibility as educators to maintain a positive classroom environment. You've seen some tips earlier, but this will give you a good framework of strategies as well. 2A, creating an environment of respect and rapport. I think a lot of it starts with you, making sure that, hey, you're presenting in a very professional, high-end corporate feel, signage, nice room, good marketing leading up to the program. That experience is going to create respect, right? If you're able to share a personal stories, authenticity, that's going to help you build that rapport. If there's any out of hand behavior, disrespect among other students, nipping that in the bud and taking care of that immediately. So that's a very important, we're the orchestrator of the class. It's important you take that responsibility there. And another thing that helps quite a bit is helping students develop their own reasons to learn, because with reasons, now they have a reason to sit there and listen, participate, or do whatever you're instructing them to do. Next, 2B, establish a culture for learning and application of financial principles. The key word there, application. Most subjects don't enjoy that real world application, right? How are you going to apply a real world math problem in the real world, right? Now, there may be some examples, but with like budgeting, we can have them do their budget. With planning to buy a car, we can have them do everything that's needed. Check their credit, shop loans, do all those things. If it's researching how much their income they'll have at retirement, they can look up on socialsecurity.gov. I'm not sure if that's the site or not, but the Social Security site, see how much they're eligible for. Talk to their HR person about their pension. They can do those things. Real world application. That is the beauty of personal finance that other subjects don't enjoy. Next, managing classroom and technology-based procedures. Technology, right? Remember connectivist learning strategy, connectivist philosophy. Basically, how are we helping utilizing technology to enhance learning and give students different ways to learn, different ways to interact? This, I'm pointing at my computer now. This connects me with information. Back in my day, I had a library, had to go search Dewey Decimal System up and down, took a long time. Today, these students have access to information at their fingertips. The challenge, though, is vetting out information. So we talk about that in that section there as well. 2D, managing participants' conduct to support learning process. I alluded to this before, but you need to take control of that classroom. Sometimes it's challenging, and you're going to need to learn those strategies. Everybody has a different way of handling that. I always say, if you're volunteering in the class, make sure the teacher, whoever is handling that. If they're not, I send people out, right? I'm there to teach. I want to help people that are ready to learn. I don't have time for those other people, right? I want to help them long term, but if it's going to mess up the learning of 30 other kids and 2 kids are messing around, distracted, they're out, right? And that's their problem. That's how I manage classrooms. I don't deal with it. Typically, I can influence them. I'll give them a few chances. Yeah, I know when I was younger, I kind of goofed around a bit. As long as they're respectful and weren't messy with other learners, I don't care if they're chatting too much. But when it gets to disrespecting other learners or making other students feel uncomfortable, that's where you need to intervene right away. Lastly, 2E, organizing physical and or virtual space. It's important. You come in organized, as we talked about in the the learner experience section, creating a very professional, high-end corporate feel event. Very basic. Having bringing in a gentleman that attends our Friday calls all the time. He carries with him a Gregory black tablecloth. So when he goes in, he puts them over the table. Always have banners, signage. Make sure you're testing things before you arrive. If it's a class you're not doing all the time, make sure you have the technology, extra batteries, all those things. If it's virtual, make sure you know how it works. Have somebody maybe there to help you. Just make sure you're presenting very professional appearance. I've seen people where the cord doesn't work, and the event's supposed to start, and they're scrambling trying to figure things out. It doesn't look good. Right now, things happen sometimes, right? Things happen, programs don't work, etc. But the more proactive we could be, getting there earlier, doing the preparations, make sure we have extra of everything, extra cords, extra chargers. That's going to do a long way for you there. Domain 3, delivery of instruction, right? How are we teaching, right? And again, we had a whole section delivered on this. So this is going to be a good recap for your test. 3A, communicating with participants to ensure understanding of content and application into real life scenarios. Again, that application of real life financial situations. That was a big piece when we developed these standards with the Danielson group. Very big piece. And it was a key point that we had to add throughout. How do we apply this in the real world? Things that are tangible, that will benefit them in actually their real life. Important. 3B, using questions to discuss and techniques to engage participants to promote learning. Remember reflective activities, remember conversations, having students teach, having them discuss with each other, peer teaching, all are great ways to get students involved. And the question we ask are critical, right? And one technique I like is when I'm talking to a class, let's say on goals or visions, why is money important? Why is money important to you guys? right? If a student says, well, I want to take care of my family, right? Wonderful. Hey, anybody else want to do that? You see all the hands go, making eye contact, right? So we're able to leverage one person's communication and sharing to pull in everybody else. Oh, I want to travel. Oh, where do you want to travel to? Oh, Brazil. Great. Anybody else want to travel? How many people want to go to Brazil, right? So we can dig in and get more class buy-in. So just one tip for you there. 3C, engaging participants in learning by increasing relevancy, motivation, and interest. The number one reason teens and adults learn is because of reasons. That motivation tying in with the personal reasons. Fortunately, with this, we have an easy job. It's easy to help develop reasons. I just gave you an example of how one method we could do. I remember a teacher I had in high school, really good guy, Mr. Birch. Him and I got along. He was my chemistry teacher, but he knew I was like, I'm never going to need this. I don't care about this, but it was always respectful conversation. He'd always send me out in the hall to let me do my own thing, because he just, we had that type of I won't say a good relationship in that sense. But I looking back, I feel for that guy because he had to work so hard to get students interested. He was a great teacher, but I'm like, a lot of people are like, I'm never going to need that, right? He had a tough job, really good guy, funny, always trying to engage him, and I really wish he was teaching personal finance. I wish that for him so much. He would have had a completely different experience, and we have it easy. Mr. Birch had it hard. We have it easy because everybody needs to know about money. There's a direct relationship with key things they're interested in: relationships, family, travel, status, security, clothes, everything, right? There's an easy connection. Chemistry, it's a hard connection. So we have it easy. Remember that. 3D, using assessments and instruction to guide decisions and provide feedback. So all the data we're gathering in the define section before and during, we're leveraging that feedback, making data-driven modifications. So if we're doing like a 10-week course, and on week 3, we notice people are shifting toward, hey, let's say interested in, buying a first home, and we see the class shifting there. Hey, we can make data-driven decisions to add more of those components, and then we'll use that more in examples if we're talking about credit, etc. We talk a lot about gathering the data, right, in the define section. The utilization of the data is critical. If you don't use the data, what's the point of gathering it? Yes, it will improve outcomes of your program, but if you can use it mid-programming to improve what you're doing, that's gold right there. 3E, demonstrating flexibility and responsiveness during instruction. Well, I gave you an example, right? That's flexibility and responsiveness when we use data or a student interest to change what we're supposed to teach about, right? And that flexibility is important. Now, sometimes if you have grants or other things that are constricting and saying, hey, you need to cover A, B, C, and D, make sure you cover A, B, and C, and D, but try to tie in things like I said, if we need to cover credit, budgeting, expenses, etc. We can still cover those with the overarching umbrella of buying a home or those type of examples. So make sure you're hitting your check marks, but have some flexibility there for you. Lastly, professional responsibilities. A big theme of the section. I said in the first video, this is important not only for you to be credible, respected, it's important for other CFPIs that you're to the highest standards, because otherwise it pulls down the quality, how people perceive them. It's important to us as an organization. And most importantly, professional responsibilities are important to your learner. They're trusting you to give them good information. They're so used to like influencers and things. There's some great influencers out there, but some they're putting out misinformation, bad information, and people are becoming more aware. It's important you're developing that trust so people understand what you're delivering is correct. Trust is developed in many ways. We talked about the overall positioning of you. And also there might be some areas you don't know, right? And I think trust is also saying, hey, that's a great question. I don't know. Let's look it up together and find out, right? Going through that. So trust can be earned in that way too. So let's get into the actual standards there. 4A, reflecting on teaching. That's important. You teach a class, afterwards you're done, hey, what was working? I remember, and I also like to take notes. When I run a class, I'm like taking notes. Okay, hey, there's good response here. Hey, most of the group was disinterested here. Hey, we have these questions here. How can I proactively address that? But that reflection is key. Take time after every event, take notes, reflect on it, and you're always trying to improve and tweak things there. Maintaining accurate records, important. Again, I don't think I need to get too much into detail there. Important. 4C, communication with stakeholders. Remember, case study. We're going to get into that in this chapter of the training, but I talked about that at the intro. Critical, critical, critical. That is going to be your golden ticket for no matter if you're working for somebody, if you're trying to get funding, if you're trying to get opportunities, do your case study, prove your program impact. It does everything for you, and it is a standard. Now, when you communicate with stakeholders, you're able to show them this nicely done report. One of our early reports we did was for Simon Scholars. And I remember this because they had about 100 different types of special events for these youth over the year. And they had like, I taught at a 3 or 5 day workshop at Chapman College one year, different colleges future years. But that first year they had, like 30 different type of breakout sessions and throughout the year they had, ongoing sessions like that. But like they had etiquette people, college admission people. It was a really good, high quality program. And we put together this case study report and sent it to Joanne. And she passed it on, went to the CEO, everybody. We got invited to all their award ceremonies. We were the only one of the educators there that they had. They were so impressed with this report. If I show you what it looked like today, you'd probably laugh, but it was still the highest quality that they got from any of their people. And when I look at it today, even though I laugh just because I know how we've grown, when I look at the industry, it is heads and tails above what 95+% of the industry is doing. All they're doing is post tests on content knowledge. It's lacking a ton. So even in our very infancy, it was way better than what is going on out there today. So that communication with stakeholders is key. It's going to help position you as a respected practitioner and will help land more opportunities for you. 4D, participation in the professional community, right? There's a lot of ways to do so these days. Attend events, LinkedIn groups, joining our calls every Friday, networking with people that are other CFEIs. There's a lot of ways. We have our advisory board, advocacy committee, our state chapters. All these are ways you can participate. And getting involved is good because you find partners, collaborators, just people that can share insight, provide support. You can provide support to them. It's a good thing to establish. And lastly, 4E, demonstrating professionalism, ethical content, and advocacy. We had a whole other section on professionalism and ethics. The advocacy piece I want to touch on. I encourage everybody to join our advocacy committee. It's complimentary with the CFEI. Every quarter, we have one big policy and legislative campaign we do. About 8 times a year, we have more interactive type campaigns like a Take Your Kid to Work Day and various things like that that are more interactive, engaging, and more light, right? But we want you involved in advocacy to advance financial education. I think it's every student's right to graduate capable to make financial decisions. If you agree, I invite you to join. Just type in United for Financial Literacy Advocacy Committee or find the link somewhere here. Again, we provide all the resources, that's added training, and it's a really good community as well. We have quarterly meetings that are advocacy focused outside of our Friday calls as well. And you are all welcome to attend. I'd love to see you there and meet you there. And additionally, connect with me on LinkedIn. Love to connect with you there as well. But basically, that framework, the framework for teaching, we put this at the end to wrap up a lot of what you covered before, right? It's meant to repeat what you've heard before, provide different angles and unique insight. As you are out there teaching, I suggest you reflect back on this framework. It provides more like a Cliff Note version of everything that you need to do. I would also suggest you download the full framework for training, teaching personal finance and read through the whole thing. right? Because that's going to provide additional color and insight. It will also provide you a way to gauge your skill sets across these other areas. I would even invite you to rank yourself across these areas and use it as a tool to gauge how you've come. A lot of times people don't see how far they've developed because they forget what life was like 2 years ago, right? And where they're at. By having a framework like this, you can gauge your progress if you're taking accurate measures across. I think there's 22 different domains there that you can gauge, right? So I thank you for joining here today. I hope this was helpful. Continue on with this more in-depth training that's coming up on this, and we'll see you back here very soon.